welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to see more content from me, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel. Also consider clicking the notifications bell if you want to see when I will post a new video. Also, if you are interested in a private reading, I do readings in astrology on a variety of topics ranging from relationship readings to career to transits for 2-3 years, or solar return charts or predictions for 1 year, etc. You are free to email me at the email address that I will leave in the video description, and I can send you a pricing list and reading options and any other details that you might require. Also, I want to mention that I have started membership options on this channel, and the short of it, just to give you the short perks that you will get if you choose to join the membership section, you will get 1 extra video per month for each membership stage or tier. So for the first tier, you will get 1 extra video per month. For the second tier, you will get 2 extra videos per month, so you will have access to level 1 and level 2 videos. And for level 3 or third tier, you will get 3 extra videos per month. The level 1 and level 3 videos are going to be on a variety of topics, so basically anything related to astrology, but it will be content that is not shown on my regular usual videos, right? So this is members only exclusive content, and it can range from, tips and tricks on how to read a horoscope to, I haven't done this yet, but I plan on doing maybe members only astrological synastry for famous couples, for instance, or the analysis of famous people's horoscopes, but then I can also get into divisional charts, etc., etc. So all kinds of things. The level 1 or second tier of membership options is especially related to synastry astrology topics, meaning relationship-oriented astrology. So this could be things like how to discover which kind of partner archetype is right for you according to your horoscope, or it could be, again, different characteristics, whether you're going to have a good marriage according to your horoscope or a less than stellar marriage. But you can find more concrete examples in the lists that you will find in the video description, because I have added the playlists where you can already see all the videos that I have posted in each members section. So yeah, you can see what videos you will have access to from the ones that I have already done. But I will continue to post, like I said, 1 extra video per month for each level of membership. And in addition to that, in the members only section, you will have access to members only polls, and you will also have priority when it comes to getting your comments replied to on my channel. And you will also have stickers that basically show up next to your username that show that you are a member, and a couple of exclusive emojis. All right, so that's pretty much all the perks that you can have as a member on my channel. If you're curious, you can check the video description for more details as well, or you can click the join button under any of my videos to also see the prices, because the prices will be shown in your local currency. All right, in addition to the members only section, I also have a tarot channel, and I post there semi-regularly, and I will be linking the tarot channel in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. It's called Martine's Tarot. So if you are curious about tarot, if you're into it, maybe check out my channel, maybe subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening to this intro. And now I'm going to get straight into today's topic. Hello and welcome to my channel. So this is going to be the predictions for 2025 series. I know that I should have started a while ago, and for a bit I was kind of hovering back and forth between should I still do this series, should I not do it? Those of you who have been watching my channel for a few years, you probably remember that I have done these predictions for, the year in question, like yearly predictions, a way back. I think I started with 2021 maybe. And I don't remember exactly if I did them until 2023 but I definitely didn't do them for 2024 because I did say at that time also I was running late and I didn't really have the time or energy to focus on them, and they are quite time consuming. But this time I said, you know what, F it. I feel like it's time to do the prediction series, and I did do a poll in my community page some weeks ago. I think it was more than a month ago, to be fair, and I asked how many of you would like to see your predictions for 2025, and pretty much an overwhelming majority said that they would be interested in seeing it. So I figured, hey, I'm not that late because 2025 still has at least another 11 months to go, so I figured better late than never. So here it is. I'm going to start with the predictions. As an introduction, I do want to say, again, mostly for those of you who have watched these prediction videos in previous years, you probably remember that generally I like to divide the year into subsections. This year was really complicated to do, so I'm not going to be able to do a chart for each subsection, because if I had to do that based on the planets that I normally look at for general predictions, which are Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, and Jupiter, I would have had to divide the year into like 5 different charts and, compute 5 different charts and arrange them and all that. So I chose to divide the year in just 3 different charts, and then 2 of those 3 charts have subdivisions. But you're going to see what I'm talking about in a more visual way when I get to each subdivision. You will see a chart with the general transits and more details on them. I do want to start talking about, I want to mention, okay, I'm not going to hold a long speech, but I want to mention again, just as in previous years, I have decided to focus on, like I said, Saturn and Rahu, Ketu, and then Jupiter, because these are the more slow-moving planets, so they spend a longer time in one sign. So obviously, it doesn't mean that these are the only transits you're going to be going through in 2025, because all the planets are transiting, right? As you probably know, the sun is going to be spending about 30 days in one sign. That's why everyone knows that they're born in Aries or Gemini or whatever, or, what all of the people who know their zodiac signs know, which is that the sun changes every month, like every roughly 30 days or so. And in addition to the sun, of course, there's the other planets. So each of them are going to be transiting through a sign. But because these are general readings, and of course it would be impossible to look at everything, because even with these readings, you're going to see, I think they're pretty detailed. I'm going to go pretty much in detail with a lot of things. But it would have been even more impossible to take into account all the transits. And then, of course, speaking of the subject of predictions, you also have to look at the dashas and the mahadashas and the antardashas and all the different types of dashas that you're going through, which are basically periods of your life that are ruled by a particular planet or a point like Rahu Ketu based on your time of birth, right? So every person is going through their independent individual dasha or sub-dashas, right? And like I said, there are also multiple types of dashas, but I'm not going to get into that. Those of you who come from Vedic astrology, and again, those of you who have been watching my videos for a long time, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. The rest of you, I do recommend that you also do a little bit of research, and you can also find some videos on my channel where I do briefly mention dashas and antardashas, although I don't think I've ever done a video that where I specifically focused on how to read dashas and antardashas. I don't know, maybe I should look into that. If you're interested, comment in the comment section. But this was the introduction. Another part of the introduction, actually, that I want to mention before I get into it is that you're going to see this on the charts that I have drawn, basically. that I have marked the aspects of the main planets, but I just want to remind you, just in case you have forgotten. Again, those of you who have watched my channel for a long time, you probably know this already, but as a recap, if you're looking at Saturn, according to Vedic astrology, Saturn has so-called special aspects. In fact, multiple planets in Vedic astrology have special aspects or one-sided aspects. So Saturn aspects the 3rd, the 7th, and the 10th houses from where it sits. Rahu, Ketu, and Jupiter aspect the 5th, aspect the 7th. Well, the 7th is not relevant because they're always in opposition to one another, so Rahu and Ketu are always opposite. So it's not really relevant to look at the opposition because that's where the other one is placed. But Rahu and Ketu are aspecting the 5th, the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th placements from where they are sitting. Also, of course, I didn't mention this, but of course they're aspecting and they're influencing the houses that they're actually sitting on, not just the aspects. The houses they're sitting on are the most powerfully impacted, but they also cast single-sided aspects. So yes, Rahu and Ketu are always in opposition, so that means if you have Rahu in the 1st house, Ketu will be transiting in the 7th house, right? Because they're always opposite one another. That's why on the charts that you're going to see, I have not even marked Ketu on the horoscope because it's understood that, you know, Ketu is in opposition to Rahu. And I might mention Ketu in the readings a little bit, but mostly I'm going to be focusing on Rahu. Another mention that I think is quite important is the fact that I have written down on the charts that I have drawn, I have written down the time intervals when these transits are going to be active. However, these time intervals, they are general. So bear in mind that the dates of the transits can vary by a few days depending on your location. So in order to know exactly when, let's say, Saturn is going to hit your 11th house, if you have Ascendant in Taurus, you have to actually compute your chart and do a transits calculation based on your actual physical location to know exactly the day and the minute when, you know, it's going to switch from Aquarius to Pisces, just to give you an example. But the dates that I have chosen are, you know, pretty accurate. Give or take, you know, 1 to 3 days, I would say tops, right? This is another mention. So, aside from this, yeah, I'm gonna get straight into it. Oh, there's one more thing that I wanted to mention, which is that, again, you may remember this from previous years if you have been watching my channel for a long time, that I like to do my predictions in a random order. So what I do is, right now I actually have Astro Dice. Last time I used to just pick, you know, notes from like a little urn that I created myself. I would, you know, basically do like a raffle thing where I would pick each sign that I was going to do next in the series. But now I use Astro Dice, and I like to mix it up a little bit just because, I don't feel like it's fair that Aquarius and Pisces are always last and Aries is always first, you know? So, I don't know. That's one aspect. And another aspect is, I don't know, it's just more fun this way for me to just do them randomly in a random order. And I pick the next sign, you know, by rolling a dice. So, just wanted to mention that in case maybe some of you are wondering why they're all scrambled. All right, that's pretty much what I wanted to mention, and this is the introductory part. There is going to be the same introduction for each of these videos, so if you listen to it once, you can, you should just listen to it once. Oh, yeah, there's one more thing. There's one more thing that I want to mention, and again, I have mentioned this in previous years. You can apply these readings for your ascendant sign or your moon sign. And I'm talking about the ascendant sign and moon sign of the D1 chart, the D1 natal chart, not any of the divisional charts. Okay, I cannot vouch for divisional charts. You can also try to look for, I don't know, maybe look into it, tell me if you found some kind of weird coincidences with divisional charts, but I would not look into it because divisional charts are something else, all right, a different type of energy. But with respect to, the moon and the ascendant, you can definitely look at these predictions based on your moon and your ascendant sign, and there will be accuracy connected to it. With the moon sign, it's more to do with your internal landscape and your emotions and what makes you happy on a psychological plane. Let's say, what happens on your inner landscape more, not so much like actual physical things that are happening in your surroundings, right? Whereas the ascendant is a lot more about actual life events. So something to bear in mind. All right, that's pretty much it, and I'm going to get straight into the interpretation right now. Welcome, Cancer. I know this video is very overdue, and I really hope to finish this series at some point within the next 4 weeks. I'm being optimistic here because, yes, what can I say? The soul-sucking corporate job is really sucking my soul. I'm really doing my best over here, so I'm sorry for the delay. Either way, you're still going to get most of the year in these predictions, so I hope you make the most of them. Okay, so I'm going to get straight into the interpretation. Chart 1 phase, all right, from January 1st, 2025 until roughly March 26, 2025. This phase is characterized by Saturn being in Aquarius, Rahu being in Pisces, and consequently Ketu being in Virgo, and Jupiter being in Taurus. So this phase is really a continuation of all the previous months. So these transits have been going around for multiple months, so see how it resonates also with respect to the recent past. Just thought I would start by mentioning that, all right? And the first thing that I noticed right off the bat, of course, is that you have a very strong emphasis on the 5th house, because all of these planets and points are aspecting your 5th house. So the 5th house is the house of education. It is the house of affairs of the heart, romantic affairs. It's the house of anything that you do for fun, sugar, spice, everything nice, self-expression, individuality, and all this stuff. So having an emphasis on the 5th house during this time means that you're pretty much focused on expressing yourself on the one hand. On the other hand, there's also a strong emphasis on romance and creativity and wanting to enjoy yourself, maybe getting in touch with your hobbies. And especially since Jupiter is aspecting this house, this also means that you are really encouraged to take time to have fun, to kind of disconnect, to get in the flow, that state where you're just focusing on doing something you love without thinking about the consequences, and pretty much recharging your batteries. Things that you do because you love to do them and not thinking about the materialism or social status or anything. Aside from that, of course, the 5th house is also about education. So this also shows that it's going to be a good time for you to focus on education. It can be formal education. It could be but anything that you use to cultivate yourself. And this especially connects to any kind of hobby courses. So anything that pertains to like a passion project or something that is creative, something you really love to do. All of that is the 5th house. So you're definitely going to be favored during this time to take up any kind of education in this direction. And of course, the 5th house is especially connected to dramatic arts. Not just any form of creativity, but especially the dramatic arts. So if there are any actors among you or people who want to take up, acting, whether it's a hobby or, of course, just enjoying theater more, enjoying the dramatic arts more, this is a very favorable time for this. Now, the 5th house also rules relationship to children. So for those of you who have children, this relationship is going to really come to the forefront of your existence during this time. Because Rahu is in there, there could also be some disruptions happening in the sense that there might be potential ups and downs going on with the children, maybe some unexpected situation, especially since Rahu is co-ruling the 8th house in your situation. And speaking of ups and downs, the 5th house also rules speculative gains. Now, To a large extent, this will also depend on individual horoscopes and what the condition of Saturn is in there, what other placements are aspecting, what other planets are aspecting the fifth house, for instance, or are sitting in the fifth house, and what the strength of all these planets involved is. But if the Lord of the eighth house, which is Saturn and Rahu, are very well placed in your horoscope, let's say they are exalted, Saturn is a Libra, this could actually show a period that is favorable for sudden gains, especially from speculative gains, including things like, playing the stock market or, I don't know, winning the lottery. Now, of course, I'm not encouraging anyone to take up gambling or anything during this time, but it could actually happen that you might have some unexpected sudden gain out of this during this period. Another thing is that the relationship with the in-laws, so especially for those of you who have kids, your in-laws could be particularly involved in taking care of the children during this time, or going to be particularly active in the child's life. Aside from that, let me see. So Jupiter is not just a great benefic, but it rules the ninth house in your case, which makes it a very positive planet for your horoscope. And Jupiter looking at the fifth house is definitely, spreading its benevolent, positive energy onto the fifth house. So again, this is a good indicator that there might be sudden gains. This, by the way, doesn't just necessarily mean sudden gains, especially with Saturn's aspect, which is about long-term things that take a long time to develop. This is a good time to actually look into long-term investments. So investing money, again, whether it's stocks or whatever, stocks and bonds, states, whatever they're called. Honestly, I'm not very, very familiar with, especially not in English. I don't really know the terminology for a lot of financial stuff, but pretty much anything investing in, anything that has like long-term potential development, right? Even banks offer all kinds of investment packages. So it is a good time to look into that, right? Maybe expand portfolios, maybe take a course, maybe read a book about it. It's favorable. So especially again, if all of these planets are pretty positive in your horoscope, and the fifth house is also good, this is really showing some very positive energy with respect to gaining financially out of long-term investments. Relationship with the children, despite potential ups and downs, is overall going to be good. And then Jupiter is also ruling the sixth house. The sixth house is a little bit potentially, let's say, complicated, even some might say negative. But again, as long as these planets are very positive, and Jupiter in itself is inherently a positive planet, but of course there are situations where maybe it's damaged in a horoscope, in which case it may not have the best influence. And one thing that I have mentioned maybe in other videos as well is, and you can Google this, there are free calculators online where you can calculate your Ashtak-Varga score. So the Ashtak-Varga system is a mathematical system that basically calculates a certain strength for each planet in the horoscope. And based on the Ashtak-Varga score, if you know that, for instance, one of these planets that is aspecting your fifth house right now has a high score, then there's a high likelihood that something really positive is going to happen. Same thing if the fifth house itself has a high Ashtak-Varga score. And now, based on most systems that I have seen, of methods of calculations that I have seen, a high Ashtak-Varga score means pretty much anything over, let's say, 29, 30. So it's worth looking into. I have definitely, in fact, I might do a video about the Ashtak-Varga at some point in the future, because I have found it really relevant in, especially when it comes to predictions, and seeing whether something is going to have a predominantly positive outcome or a predominantly negative outcome. All right, so this is the main house that is really, activated by multiple transits, and this is, of course, just looking at these planets that I am analyzing without taking into account other transits, because all planets are constantly moving. It's just that a lot of the other transits are not that long lasting. Aside from that, we do have Jupiter in the 11th house, aspecting the 3rd and the 5th houses. Very positive. This basically means that during this time, your social life is generally favored. And especially again, since Jupiter is ruling the 9th house, which is a very positive house. But of course, in your case, it's a little bit mixed because it's also ruling the 6th house. So from the 9th house perspective, this definitely shows that you will be favored in terms of being supported, generally having good support from your social circle, from your romantic partner or your business partner. Also from any kind of audience. So if you're someone who has a strong social media following, or you, I don't know, have some kind of visibility, really, let's say you're a public figure or you have a business or something, you're definitely going to see a lot of positivity happening during this time. And on the other hand, though, because Jupiter also rules the 6th house, you could also have a little bit of arguing, maybe more than usual, happening with your friends, with social circles, siblings, and or partners of any kind, including the romantic partner, especially the spouse. So if you're married, that's especially true for you. But this also pertains to anyone who is in a long-term romantic relationship. Now, aside from that, Rahu is also in the 9th house. So this definitely shows a very strong wanderlust. So Rahu being in the 9th house, it shows that you feel a very strong desire to explore the 9th house. So going out traveling, maybe going to places you haven't gone to before. This can also show a desire to understand foreign cultures more. You might find yourself more curious about studying a certain, culture or a certain religion. That's another thing. Because 9th house does predominantly connect to higher philosophy, so everything that connects to a person's worldview, like general ideas about life, they're pretty much their overall perspective on things. So thinking, lofty ideals, lofty ideas, they're all falling under the governance of the 9th house. And all forms of beliefs and religions are also falling into the 9th house. With Rahu going through the 9th, another thing is, for those of you who maybe have been religious up until this point, you might find yourself maybe questioning some things or looking again towards outside perspectives. Rahu in particular shows some kind of a foreign element, so there's a possibility that you will find a spiritual teacher or a mentor or some kind of a paternal figure even that is coming from a foreign culture. Someone who might become some kind of a guide or a teacher to you. And another thing with this is, again, Rahu is co-ruling the 8th house. So this could also show that during this whole time when Rahu is going through Pisces, you will have some kind of a transformation of your worldview. So, again, it could be like your whole view of the world, the whole, belief system that you have adhered to up until this point will be changed somehow on some fundamental level. Now, this could be coming from you because you just feel compelled to look at different perspectives or try to understand things from an outside perspective, or it could also be as a result of some kind of traumatic event. And I hate to use big words like traumatic, but usually with the 8th house, there is some kind of shaking up happening. 8th house shows sudden events, accidents, ups and downs. So it could even be that as a result of, some kind of unexpected life event, that you start to question the way that you see things or your religion or your belief systems. And you just generally could come through at the end of this transit, being a totally changed person from the beliefs perspective. And also Rahu is also about nature. So you might find yourself more in a more environmentalist mentality during this time. Maybe you are going to be more concerned with animals and more concerned with, just being more quote unquote green oriented or eco oriented. Right, so that's pretty much the main thing that I can say. Another way to look at this is more specific for those of you who are, well, there are many ways to look at this. And again, that's why I always mention it's also important to look at the individual horoscope to get a more specific view. But one other way to look at it, which is more specific, is your in-laws could somehow help in shaping your worldview during this time. Another way to look at it, which again is more specific, is this could be a time when you seek to take out a loan or get into some kind of a debt for some reason. Well, not for some reason, for the reason of pursuing an education. Either pursuing an education or, again, something to do with religion. Like, I don't know, you could be taking out a loan so you could live at an ashram in India for 6 months or something, just to give you an example, right? But since the ninth house also governs formal education, especially higher education, like usually around master's degree, the bare minimum, usually PhD and above, that's ninth house. So you could be, requiring a loan to pursue a PhD during this time, for instance, or getting into academia. So that's one way to look at it. Aside from that, again, Saturn going through the 8th house. I do have to say that with Saturn going through the 8th house, when it comes to the topic of loans in general, actually, it won't be easy for you to get a loan during this time. That's also something that I kind of should have mentioned as a disclaimer. Because Saturn tends to show obstacles and frustrations and things that take a lot of time. And also, Saturn is really going to test you in the area that it transits. It wants to make sure that everything is done thoroughly and sustainably and looked at from the perspective of long-term development. So when Saturn is transiting through the 8th house, this is showing that, like I said, if you want to get a loan of any kind, you have to be very thorough. You will be tested to the max, and it will generally create obstacles and frustrations in this area. By the same token, it could also show frustrations with anything to do with foreign languages, including travels to places where foreign language is being spoken. And yeah, this is something to take into account. If you travel to a different country, you might run into all kinds of frustrations, like delays of planes, I don't know, bad accommodations, etc., etc. I don't want to freak anyone out. I'm just giving people a heads up. I have also had similar transits, and I learned the hard way that it's best to prepare when you see that certain transits are approaching, all right, or when you're going through them. Aside from that, Saturn, of course, the 8th house, like I said, is also the house of the in-laws. So there could be some tensions happening or some frustrations happening with the relationship with the in-laws. They could give you grief more than usual. Yeah, there could be all kinds of problems there. And last but not least, also the 8th house has to deal with, well, not last but not least, because it deals with a lot of things. So 8th house also deals with, for instance, research and anything that has to deal with introspective, even self-research, so psychology. And Saturn being, again, in the 8th house, this could show a lot of heaviness on an emotional plane. And there might be even a slight tendency towards depression, especially if Saturn is also aspecting the moon, either by transit or in your natal horoscope. There might be a slightly higher tendency than usual towards depression or gloomy thoughts. And also because there will, and the process of psychotherapy, if you're going through psychotherapy, might be particularly painful, but this is because Saturn really wants you to get to the bottom of things. And progress is definitely going to happen, but again, it's going to come with time, investments, discipline, method, dedication, all of the nice Saturnian things, right, that stand the test of time. Another thing, again, could be seen as very, kind of, how should I put it, specific, but you might find that older people are somehow really helpful to you, either in research or, again, like I said, when it comes to psychology. So, understanding yourself. Because Saturn's aspecting the 10th house, this also shows a lot of effort will be put towards the house of career. And really, it's a good scenario for you because Jupiter is going through the 11th house during this time. So while Jupiter is going through your 11th house, you're going to see a good, steady amount of gain coming from your career. So you're going to continuously feel motivated and stimulated to invest energy in your profession, in your work, because you're going to be seeing the gains pretty much directly proportional to how much effort you put in. So yeah, it's going to be a good time when it comes to career and finances generally. Although, with respect to finances, I do also want to issue kind of a warning because Saturn again is looking towards the second house, even though actually the seventh house, the seventh aspect of Saturn is actually the most positive aspect of Saturn. It still means that you have to be cautious when it comes to your expenses. It's better to have money saved for rainy days rather than, splurging whenever you make a little bit more money and then not having anything saved. Basically, Saturn again is going to really test you in terms of how you manage your finances, your assets especially. Also relationship to the family of origin. So relationship to in-laws as well as the family of origin could be particularly tense during this time. Either tense or I think a better word would be cold. Cold, professional, distant. You may not have as much time as usual to spend with your either family of origin or the family of the spouse. Another more specific thing that I wanted to say is the 8th house actually shows the face of your spouse. So Saturn transiting through that could potentially show, especially since Saturn is ruling the 7th in your horoscope as well, and it's ruling the 8th itself as well. This could potentially show also a some kind of ailment or something happening to the spouse's face and throat. So the spouse might have laryngitis during this time or something. Again, I don't want to freak anyone out. I'm just giving a heads up it might happen. If you see any signs of this becoming a potential threat, it's best to take action from the beginning, from the first signs. And aside from that, of course, Lord of the 8th house, going through the 8th house, being Saturn, see, you're going to have a pretty strong attraction towards the occult, maybe even more than usual during this time when Saturn is going through Aquarius. I'm losing the voice, see? Anyway, so yeah, while it's transiting through Aquarius, it's really gonna, like I said, increase your tendency to be focused on the occult, but at the same time might increase more frustrations when it comes to pursuing knowledge in the occult. Because again, Saturn wants you to be thorough, and it might cause obstacles. You might be frustrated that you don't find a certain book on Wicca that you have been looking for 8 months or something, just to give you an example. Stuff like that could happen. Rahu aspecting the 9, so the fire houses, right, makes you more extroverted than usual. And it also increases your charisma to a large extent, especially the aspect on the Ascendant. So you will stand out more than usual. And you will also come across as more, how should I put it? I don't want this to sound negative, but you're going to come across as more fascinating, more mysterious than usual, more attractive even, because Rahu again co-rules the 8th house. Looking at your Ascendant, it's going to add that aura of mystery and attraction to you. So you could, make the most of this because you're going to be more charismatic, more influential. People are more likely to notice you and to listen to what you have to say. Aside from that, Saturn looking at the second house could also create, same thing for you, by the way, it could create problems with the throat, with the face, with the voice, any kind of ailments. Again, be careful with any ailments connected to that. Nip them in the bud if they appear. And aside from that, it can also decrease your appetite for food. Actually, both you and your spouse might have a decreased appetite for food during this time. or you might seek towards, you might move towards, let's say, a more simpler diet, you know, just the bare necessities, not too much gourmet anything. And aside from that, Ketu is going through your third house. So this is showing a time when you might actually feel a lack of courage. You might feel, maybe not a lack, okay, I don't want to sound too harsh, but you will feel less courage than usual. You will feel less gutsiness than usual. And you will have this maybe stronger tendency to abandon yourself, to abandon your will, and you need to watch out for that, because again, Ketu, just like Rahu, they are two sides of the same coin, and both of them can, you know, cast false feelings and illusions and kind of seek to test you in many ways. So Ketu, on the other hand, in the third house, tends to show that throughout your, normally it would show, for instance, for people who are born in these times, it will show that many lifetimes they have really perfected the third house. So they have been very courageous in past lives, and they've also focused on pushing themselves forward and really seeing things from their kind of very individualistic point of view. And now they're supposed to move more towards the ninth house, which is more altruistic and more of a higher overview position, you know, seeing things from the big picture as opposed to being caught up in your little minute everyday existence details and all that. But when it comes to a transit, it really can risk this tendency of, you know, you losing interest, maybe even losing interest towards the things that you normally had interest in. So again, it's something to watch out for. And Ketu is also aspecting your air houses. Air houses, just like Jupiter, which is actually, you know, kind of tones down the general negative impact of Ketu, because Jupiter will cast its benevolent aspect on it. But it also shows that you will simultaneously kind of take a step back from socializing. So even though you are favored when it comes to socializing, at the same time you might start to lose interest in it. So be careful for that. Like, you don't want to miss out on, you know, enjoying time with friends or enjoying social connections because you become too apathetic or too introverted and you just don't want to mingle. The less positive aspect of this is it could even cause you to lose interest in your current romantic partner. On the other hand, for those of you who are actually looking for a romantic partner, this is a good time to meet somebody. It's a really good time to meet somebody, especially if you're a woman, but not just if you're a woman, right? And the reason I say especially if you're a woman is because Jupiter rules the spouse archetype, the husband archetype for a woman, according to traditional Vedic astrology. And it is aspecting your 7th house and your 5th house. The 5th house is the house of dating. 7th house is the house of marriage, right? So potential romantic partners, they might show up during this time. All right, so pay attention to that if you are single and ready to mingle. And then, of course, Ketu also looking towards the 7th house while being the co-ruler of the 5th house, again, really kind of sets the mood for love. You know what I mean? So, yeah, pay attention to that. All right, this is pretty much what I see when it comes to the chart 1 phase. And now I'm going to move on to the chart 2 phase. Okay, so Ketu is going to stay in the 3rd house. Rahu is going to stay in the 9th house. The difference is that Saturn is moving in Pisces. So now we have a Rahu-Saturn conjunction in the 9th house. All right, now Jupiter during this second chart phase is going to switch signs. That's why I haven't even added it to the chart. I just wrote the positions there in the orange. So Jupiter is going to continue to stay in Taurus from around March 26th to May 13th. And then it's going to move in Gemini from around May the 13th until June 8th, roughly. So Saturn in Pisces, Rahu in Pisces, and the chart 2 phase pertains to the period between March 26th to June 8th, roughly 2025. All right, so during this time, the main aspect is the Rahu Saturn conjunction, like I said, which is going to be going through your ninth house. Now, this is kind of putting more of a heaviness towards that ninth house energy. First of all, I can tell you this right off the bat. This is definitely the time when you have to be careful about traveling, because you could really have a lot of frustrating situations, especially since in your case, Rahu is co-ruling the 8th house, which is the house of sudden events, right? And especially if in your horoscope, Rahu and or Saturn or any planets involved with the 8th or the ninth houses are particularly afflicted, you could see the more negative impact of this transit, which is sudden, unpleasant events could happen involving the ninth house. So, like I said, traveling. That's a big one, but of course, some of the other things, like I said previously, that are connected to the ninth house include things like teachers, mentors, even paternal figures. So there could be some tense relationships happening with a paternal figure during this time. Rahu can actually show sudden separation. Saturn can show distance. For those of you who, for instance, are still living very closely to your parents or you're very in touch, you might perceive your father figure during this time to be more authoritarian and, way more authoritarian. Like, you might really be frustrated that they tried to boss you around, for instance. Or with Rahu there could also be a tendency for superficiality and overly being focused on materialism. So, for some reason, I was thinking about that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, by Robert Kiyosaki. I haven't checked his horoscope, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has, some kind of Saturn Rahu going on the ninth house. Because, the philosophy. So remember, the ninth house is one's philosophy, one's view of the world. And Saturn and Rahu, especially in conjunction, they show a pretty materialistic point of view, even though here they're falling in Pisces. Of course, you also have to look at the nakshatras and all that, but I don't have time to get so in depth in this video. But even though, Pisces is not like the most materialistic energy, because of the Rahu influence, this could be a very materialistic energy. So, for instance, this could show especially that you might be at risk to be led astray, risk of being led astray by false prophets, quote unquote, or like false gurus. People who are parvenites, people who are just very good at selling religious concepts, or even worst case scenario, something like a cult leader. So be careful during this time. Again, I don't want you to be like hyper paranoid and be like, oh, I can't trust anyone and I'm not going to leave my home. But it's worth, double checking. Like, I don't know, if you come across some person that mesmerizes you and makes you think, oh my God, this person's so amazing, they're so smart, I want to read everything they wrote and I'm going to follow them on the internet and all that. Be careful and do a little bit of a background check before you get too invested, right? And because you might, like I said, you might just fall prey to someone who is like a false prophet. Aside from that, right, Pisces is also very creative. So this can actually be pretty positive for people who are involved in some kind of creative profession, because you might go through some kind of extreme. In fact, I don't want to say extreme, because with Saturn there, it's not going to be an easy process, but you might see progress with a lot of efforts in areas of creativity. So if you are suffering from, let's say, a creative block by just applying simple everyday activities, or like, spending, let's say, half an hour a day sketching, you might get some good ideas. Doing things that are repetitive, consistent on a day-to-day basis, eventually over time can lead you to great ideas and things that really attract attention, right? Because that's the Saturn energy. if this is a very positively placed Saturn Rahu situation and the ninth house is good and the eighth house is good in your case, in your particular horoscope, you can actually see a lot of gains happening during this time because, again, Saturn and Rahu, both of them are co-ruling the eighth house. And the eighth house, it can be either rags to riches or it could be riches to rags. It depends on what the conditions are and, a bunch of other things that are happening there in the individual horoscope. But there is a chance that with this conjunction, you could see huge gains. And one thing that I can say is, especially because the eighth house is about loans, actually, is that during this time, generally, you will find it easier to, get a loan of any kind. And when Jupiter is moving in Gemini, let me check a little bit. So when Jupiter is going to be moving in Gemini, especially, so this is from around May 13th onwards, because Jupiter is going to be aspecting your 8th house, this is really going to be a good time for you to take out a loan if you have been looking for getting a loan for anything. As by the same token, it will be a good time to succeed in anything connected to 8th house activities. So anything involving transformation, anything involving using other people's finances. Again, could even be stuff like investing money, savings, loans, investing in a pension fund or insurance or anything. And even for people who, of course, make a living out of this profession, it's going to be a very lucrative time when Jupiter aspects the 8th house. By the same token, it's going to be a good time for people who are involved in any kind of research, anything connected to the occult, and or anything to do with psychology and foreign languages. Yep, very lucrative time. It's time. You might find it easier to find a home that you like, or if you don't have any plans of changing your home, this could be a good time for redecorating, let's say, or renovating your home, or something like improving your home environment. So, like I said, when Gemini is going through Gemini, especially when Jupiter is going through Gemini, and Jupiter is ruling the 6th house. So during this time, you might actually gain from conflicts or enemies, competitions, conflicts, or enemies. See how that resonates. Like, for instance, it could be like if you have had to deal with some kind of a trial, right? You have higher chances of the trial being solved in your favor. And again, you could be involved in a certain competition of some sorts. It could really help you out, especially for those of you who want to get into a higher education program or anything to do with an educational program, actually, or anything to do with religion or healthcare at the same time. You're going to be particularly favored in this time when Jupiter is in Gemini. So from around May 13th. And I think it's going to stay in Gemini, if I remember correctly, until October 13th. But I'm going to see that in the next phase. Just bear in mind that while Jupiter is in Gemini, this is a really good time for you in any of the things that I have mentioned previously. And it's also going to be a good time emotionally. Like, you're going to see, if you have battled depression, anxiety, and all that, you're going to see an improvement in your mood during this time. All right, so this is pretty much what I can say that is particular to this phase. Otherwise, everything I said about Rahu being in Pisces and Ketu being in Virgo is still standing throughout this phase. And yeah, but this is pretty much the distinctive things that I could say about the chart 2 phase. All right, moving on to the chart 3 phase, which is going to be from around June 8th until the end of the year. So January 1st, 2026. This is when Saturn is going to be in Pisces and Rahu is going to be in Aquarius. So basically they're switching places right now, right? And Ketu is going to be in Leo, of course, because it's opposite Rahu. And in the first phase, like I said, Jupiter is going to be in Gemini from around June 8th until October 13th, roughly. And then it's going to move into Cancer, where it's going to stay until the end of 2025. So, how does this impact you? Saturn is going to be through the 9th house, all right? So Saturn is going to stay in the same situation as the previous phase. And this also, again, means everything that I said about traveling is going to stay true. With respect to the gurus, paternal figures, education, and all that, it's going to be less dramatic, all right? There might still be frustrations, though, but it's not going to be as bad. There's less of a chance of you getting swindled by potentially negative gurus during this time, all right? Because Saturn is sitting there by itself, Rahu has moved its influence away, so Saturn is going to make sure that things are thorough. But for those of you who are looking for a good connection with a paternal figure, a mentor, a teacher, a guru, a religious or spiritual leader, you're going to have a lot of frustrations, right? Because Saturn wants you to be thorough, wants to make sure that everything is, you know, by the book. So things that are going to stand the test of time, things that are, how should I put it, solid. No funny business, no superficiality. And in fact, your attitudes in general might become more traditionalist during this time. They might become a little bit more orthodox in some ways. And, well, actually, I would say mostly not, because Saturn is ruling the 8th house and it's falling in Pisces, especially while Saturn is in Purva Bhadrapada. You might even have a stronger tendency than usual to get involved in, let's say, taboo subjects, especially when it comes to the topic of faith and worldviews. So getting involved in Wicca, in learning about spirits and everything that's kind of occult might be even more appealing during this time. But I think for some of you, again, this is where you have to look at individual horoscopes. For some of you, though, conversely, you might return more towards a traditional view of religion, a more traditional view of the world. Well, whichever your background is, that's what your tradition is. That's what I'm talking about when I say tradition. So, I don't know, if you come from a family of Wiccans, this could just be returning back to the ways of the Wicca. For those of you who come from an Abrahamic religion, this might be, you know, getting back in touch with that particular religion during this time. And Saturn looking at, again, the 11th house, this is going to show that you're really going to put a lot of efforts into building a social circle. And it's also going to show you're going to be putting a lot of effort into gaining money out of your career. And yeah, it's going to be maybe in some ways, this phase is going to be a little bit more challenging financially. I'm not going to lie, and that's maybe why, you know, when I mentioned that Saturn is looking at the second house, and this means you need to be careful and frugal so that you don't overspend, these are the rainy days that you have to save up for, because, and I'm not, again, I don't want to throw anyone into paranoia, because I always mention this as a disclaimer, these are general predictions, so a lot can change if you look at individual horoscopes. But generally, there is this message that you really might be going through rainy days when it comes to your finances, because Ketu going through the second house at the very least shows that you will have more of an anxiety. So it may not even necessarily be that the actual finances are going to go down. It's just that your sensitivity towards the topic of finances is going to be heightened. So you might have more anxiety worrying about not having enough money. Ketu going through the second house can actually breed this kind of mentality of like never having enough. Like you feel like no matter how much you have saved, it's like it's just not making you feel secure, because Ketu tends to be an energy of constant dissolution and kind of moving away from that. But no transit is forever, although I'm not trying to tell you to just block out the entire time when Ketu is transiting through your second house, because you're looking at potentially more than a year here. So just make the most of it, which means, again, save money while you have it as much as possible. And try not to overly analyze and be overly anxious. Try to create more of a sense of faith in the fact that you're going to be taken care of, right? So, aside from that, Ketu going through the second house can also show, again, potential health problems connected to the face and the throat, especially things that are a little bit harder to, how should I put it? Harder to diagnose. So things that might be more mysterious can also show microorganisms, infections by microorganisms. So be especially careful. Don't expose yourself to unnecessary risks. It's all it means. I don't want to cause paranoia about this because, like I said, a lot depends on individual horoscopes. And aside from that, second house is your appetite. Again, you're going to continuously feel a decrease in appetite for food. And also, the second house is the house of family of origin. So, Ketu going through that can show that either willingly or by circumstance, you might find yourself becoming distant from your family of origin. This could show that I generally avoid being so negative, but Ketu can even show actual death. Now, I'm not trying to suggest, of course, anything like that, but it could be some kind of a loss, some kind of a feeling of loss about the family of origin. Now, most likely, of course, it's not a physical thing, it's more like a feeling. It's a feeling of distance, maybe a feeling like you don't fully belong anymore, because Rahu is going to push you into the energy of the 8th house to kind of move away from the family of origin. And conversely, Rahu going through the 8th house is basically showing that you're going to be overly focused on the relationship to the in-laws, if you have in-laws. And if not, of course, the 8th house is all those good things that I mentioned before, like the occult, research, psychology, self-analysis, analysis of something else, foreign languages. And so Rahu going through the 8th house, being the co-ruler of the 8th house, this is just strengthening all of that interest in the occult and research, in even learning foreign languages or maybe teaching foreign languages as well. So yeah, it's actually a really good time, and especially when it comes to making, this is yeah, but this pretty much, there's no other way to put it, making money from foreign sources, making money from foreigners, especially foreign languages. So if any of you have some kind of line of work where you're working with foreign languages, you're using foreign languages, or you're teaching, or you're learning foreign languages, all of these activities are going to be especially favored while Rahu is going through Aquarius. And especially, let me see actually, yeah, especially while Jupiter is also going through Gemini, because then Jupiter is aspecting the 8th house as well. And also while Rahu is aspecting the 4th house, again, you might be getting some kind of ideas about redecorating, renovating the apartment, the home, also the vehicles that you have. And of course, this can also be a good time to get a home or a vehicle, especially if you're looking to get a mortgage. So during this time when Rahu is in Aquarius, and especially when Jupiter is also in Gemini at the same time, so that period between June 8th to October 13th is going to be particularly strong for you to get a mortgage, move house, get a new car, stuff like that. So especially in any situation where you are relying on, loans, other people's money. Okay. when Jupiter's moving in Cancer, it's moving into your ascendant. So this is going to be the last months of the year, but of course it's going to continue a little bit after that as well. I'm going to see that next year. But for now, right, so until the end of the year, from October 13th until December 31st included, Jupiter is going to be going through your ascendant. So this is really going to increase your confidence. It's going to, well, on the more negative side, it might increase your waistline. So you have to really be careful about that. But overall, this is a very positive aspect, especially since Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So this is going to be a very good time for people to meet a potential romantic partner, especially if you're a woman, because Jupiter is the husband archetype. And Jupiter will be looking towards the 7th house. And it's also ruling the 9th house, which is the house of marriage. That's why the Navamsha is basically a dissection of the 9th house. It's not the 7th house. Because, whatever, in Vedic astrology, the concept of marriage is very deeply religious. So it's very deeply spiritual, very religious. It's not just a business contract. But anyway, let me not digress about that. The point is that, yeah, if you're looking for a long-term romantic partner, a spouse, this time towards the end of the year, this is going to be very favorable for you to find a serious romantic partner. And aside from that, of course, even if for those of you who are not, let's say you're not looking for marriage, you could still have romance, because Jupiter is also aspecting the 5th house, which is the house of romance and dating and having fun and sugar spice and everything nice. So even if you're not looking for something particularly serious, you could still have romance. Doesn't have to be something that leads to actual marriage. But since both of these houses are aspected by Jupiter, it's very, very favorable to, engage romantically with someone. And also, speaking of the aspect of Jupiter on the 5th house, again, this is showing this is a very good time for education, for learning, for teaching, spending time with children, any activity involving children, any kind of creative activity. This is a good time for those who are making a living doing something they love, for instance, or developing new hobbies, learning new skills, but especially things that really make you happy. So not just learning new skills because the soul-sucking corporate job pays you to learn it, right? It's more about getting in touch with what makes you happy and being in that heart chakra energy, that sense of joy and innocence, and just really loving to do something for the sake of doing it without thinking about profit. So very good phase to develop creativity. And again, this is also continuing with the previous phase. This is also a good time to make it in any kind of educational scenario where you have to compete. So, I don't know, this could be, a spelling bee contest. It could even be, it could be competitions within the school, exams, tests, and stuff like that. It can even be things like admission exams into university or some kind of educational programs. Again, this is also a good time to invest while Jupiter is looking at the 5th house. So when Jupiter is going to hit your 1st house, it's going to be looking at the 5th house, which is the house of speculative gains. So again, very good time to invest with the potential of long-term gains. And then Jupiter is also going to be aspecting the 9th house. So with respect to travel, this is going to be the least risky time for you to travel towards the end of the year, because Jupiter's benevolent energy is looking towards the 9th house, making sure that any kind of obstacles that Saturn is going to throw in the path of travels are not going to be devastating, right? There might still be obstacles, but they're going to be greatly reduced. And, of course, Jupiter aspecting both the 5th and the 9th houses, this definitely shows that this is a great time, not just for formal education, but any kind of self-education, cultivation, learning new things, expanding your horizon, any kind of book or anything you are drawn to toward during this time. is probably something you have to pay attention to, because there might be a reason why you feel drawn to it. Same thing with courses. And of course, while Jupiter is aspecting the ninth house again towards the end of the year, it's going to be a good relationship with the father figure for the most part, even though they might still come across as authoritative and cold because of that Saturn energy. But it's going to turn more benevolent. It's going to soften up a little bit. So it's going to soften up the relationship. And then it's also going to really, like I said, increase the chances of finding a good teacher, a good guru, or something like that. You know, someone you can really trust. Someone who's really going to support your growth. And yeah, this is pretty much what I can say, because all the other potential aspects and everything I've already covered pretty much. One more thing that I want to say though, with Ketu and I know I said I don't want to turn anyone towards paranoia, and I definitely don't, but I have to say this, okay? Ketu is not just aspecting the second, it's also looking at the 6th and the 10th houses. So you have to watch out for your health. Be really careful, especially for those of you who have issues with your digestive system, and especially like intestines and the throat and the face, anything surrounding the face, including teeth, eyes, nose, anything. So I'm just saying, if you have any kind of health problems connected to these areas, don't neglect them. And of course, the aspect of Ketu on the 10th house, especially with Ketu co-ruling your 5th, this shows that during this time, when Ketu is transiting through Leo, you're going to find it increasingly harder to stay in a profession that doesn't make you happy. You're going to be seeking to find a profession that really involves doing something you love. Okay, now whether you're actually going to make it in this big time, or whether it's just going to add to a general sense of frustration, this is more to be analyzed from individual horoscopes, because this is a general reading. You would have to see what else is going on in the 10th house, what's going on in the 5th house, where the Lord of your 10th house is placed, and all this. Basically, you would have to see a bunch of other things. But if everything is favorable, if, for instance, you also have a natal connection between the 5th and the 10th houses in your horoscope, this is a great push in the right direction. So if you have been someone who was stuck in a painful career and a job you hated, you might have the opportunity to break out of that cycle during this time. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say, and I hope you have enjoyed it. And again, feel free to come back throughout the year and, I don't know, see how it resonated, which parts resonated. And of course, feel free to comment in the comment section with anything you would like to share, as long as you keep it respectful. And if you are interested in... Oh, well, let me start with the beginning. First of all, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to my channel. It is the easiest way to support me, and it is free. And I have checked the analytics, and most people are still not subscribed to my channel. Most of the people who are watching my videos are not subscribed to my channel. So please take a minute to subscribe to my channel, and also consider clicking on the notifications bell if you want to be notified when I post a new video. Aside from that, if you would like to support my channel further, of course, you can do so through any kind of, tips that you want to leave through the leave a tip option under any of my videos. Of course, liking the videos, sharing them with as many people as you'd like. And then, of course, if you would like to, you can consider becoming a member. There are exclusive members-only contents for every... There is exclusive members-only content at each membership tier. You can find more details about the membership section in the introductory part of this video. But basically, you will get one extra video per tier of membership. And so at each higher level, the videos from the previous levels are available. So if you are a level 2 member, you have access to the video from level 1 and level 2. If you are a level 3 member, then you have access to all three, right? So if you're curious, you can also see the playlist of all the videos I've posted so far in the membership section. If you click on the join button, you will find more details about that. And then, of course, if you are interested in a private reading, I do readings on a wide variety of topics, and I have left my email address in the video description. You can email me for more details, the full list of pricing options and reading options that I offer, and any kind of details that you might be curious about. And last but not least, I also have a tarot channel, which I have started a lot more recently than this channel. And if you're curious about about tarot and you enjoy tarot, go ahead and check out my tarot channel. And yeah, maybe subscribe over there as well. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great 2025, and I hope to see you at my next video on this channel. All right.